I'm Joe Bartozzi, President and CEO of the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Thank you all for joining us for the third annual Governor's Forum hosted here at SHOT Show. This is a unique and rare opportunity for us to hear from governors from across our nation who believe in our Second Amendment rights and the need to guard those rights. These are elected leaders who not just represent the citizens of their respective states, but know the value of the firearms and ammunition industry that brings to their state. The SHOT Show's growth reflects the growth of the firearm industry that is now an $81 billion economic impact on our nation's economy, creating over 393,000 well-paying American jobs. The governors here today understand what the Second Amendment means to their citizens as a right, but also as an economic opportunity. Several companies that decided to relocate their operations began those discussions at a SHOT Show. We have seen the commitment of several of these governors to keep and attract firearm and ammunition-related jobs to their states. I want to thank you, Governor Lombardo, for allowing us to continue to hold the SHOT Show in Las Vegas. NSF truly loves having the show here, and we look forward to that partnership for many years to come. Thank you, Governor Lombardo.
Thank you.
We are eager to hear from each of the governors as they talk about their states, the business environments in those states, and their commitments to our rights and the ability of our industry to make exercising those rights possible. So thank you again, governors, for recognizing the value of our industry and for your steadfast leadership to protect gun rights of your citizens. And thank you for taking time out of your extremely busy schedules to offer insights as to what advantages your states may offer to our businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, governors, for being here. We'll start with Governor Lombardo. I want to, again, echo Joe's comments and thank you. And
we worked it out where I wasn't going first.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You lost the lottery. That happens sometimes in Vegas. You lose. So again, thank you for being the host for the SHOT Show. As Joe mentioned, we are the third largest show done in Las Vegas every year. We're the 8th largest show in the United States, or North America actually, and we're the largest show of its kind in the industry. 820,000 square feet, 18 acres, 2,600 exhibitors, and over 52,000 attendees, and brings an economic impact of $88 million to the Vegas economy. So I wanted to just ask you, given the partisan divide on our issue, how can you and the legislature in Carson City ensure that the SHOT Show can continue to come to Vegas and have a home here?
Yeah, I think it's a bifurcated issue. One is the legislature convincing them. So current situation in Nevada is, I would describe this as purple, and I'm actually one legislator away from a supermajority in both houses, against me, not for me. So what it is approach it from a different direction. Make it an economic discussion versus a guns discussion, right? And nobody can deny what we're trying to achieve in the economic space. You said the numbers earlier. It's the benefit to both the Southern Nevada and the entire state of Nevada via all the tax paradigms that we deal with. But more importantly, it's a nonpartisan issue. And I think the education piece coming out of my office on making it a nonpartisan issue and make it more amenable and attractive to what we're trying to achieve in totality versus all the negative associated with the firearm industry. And luckily, because I'm not in the supermajority, I have the power of the pen. So, being a Republican governor and believing what the show stands for and the Second Amendment and what everybody in this panel is, reason why they're even here, they stand for it is to educate the public to the benefits, not the negative aspects of it, make it economic, and when it comes to the final say, you do that. When it comes to the final say, you do that. No, what it comes to is, unfortunately, you have to provide the veto voting because of what you believe in. And hopefully the legislature doesn't put you in that position.
Well, just staying on the economic argument, one of the challenges we actually have this year for the SHOT Show is a result of a Bureau of Industry Security and the Commerce Department 90-day pause on the export of firearms, which is going to become a permanent policy The pause ends this week, and there's articles today that BIS is going to roll out their permanent policy changes. And one of the impacts of this pause is, we have companies, 127 foreign countries send buyers here. And our international buyers at this show is down 750. That's 50% of the international buyers are not here because of the pause that the Commerce Department has put in place and the refusal of the Trade Administration to bring foreign buyers to our show that want to come, that want to buy our industry's products for commercial purposes, for law enforcement and military purposes. So my question is, what can Nevada leaders, including the congressional delegation, do to remind the Biden administration of the importance of foreign and international trade for not just our industry, but for the Vegas economy and all the shows that you do here?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. You're not going to convince the Biden administration to embrace the firearm industry, right? So you got to take a different approach. And you mentioned the federal delegation, and that's a constant communication at the governor's level. It has to be at the governor's level, or they won't listen, per se, and convince them it's an economic driver versus a social issue, or whatever they believe in as part of the firearm industry. But it has to be proactive. It can't be reactive. And it's me in my position in the constant discussions with that. And fortunately, my delegation is familiar with the economic drivers, right? There's not a lot of economic drivers and diversity in the economy within the state of Nevada. So when you start talking about the convening industry and the casino industry outside agriculture, livestock, whatever it may be in mining, they tend to listen. And that's how we have to approach it.
I appreciate that. So turning to Governor Little, the ammunition industry is facing headwinds. It's not just the gun side. The Biden administration has been pursuing final rules to restrict the use of traditional ammunition on national wildlife refuges without any real signs of a population impact or an impact on human health. You've been very strong in protecting the ammunition industry in your state, which is considerable. So my question would be, what efforts are needed to protect the ammunition businesses in not just your state, but in the entire country, and their customers that use and consume traditional ammunition for hunting and target shooting?
Well, we have to have a very robust dialogue with our members of Congress, because when they do these overreaches, which they seem prone to do on a very frequent basis, you've just got to reach out to your friends in Congress, and whether you can add it as onto an approach bill or do authorizing or add it to something else, that's what you need to do. But this show, I visited. You talked about how big the campus is. I can tell you it's about a 7.5 mile walk for a governor of Idaho to go to all their vendors that are here. But what I'm struck by, and you always hear this hymnal about rural America, most of these jobs that are here are in these small communities. They're communities where there was a sawmill or a mill or a food processing plant. And now those people are working in the armament business or the rec tech business. And it's such great economic development that anything they do, whether it's the prohibition on lead that's going to increase by a third the cost of ammunition, which is going to discourage an already lowering population of people that want to go out and hunt, or the other things they do. We're talking about a constitutional right that needs to be protected, and we got to reach out to our friends in Congress and get help from them, and help is on the way.
Well, speaking of protecting the Second Amendment, the industry has seen recently an effort started with Andrew Swerkin of the New York Times and Amalgamated Bank, the Bank of the DNC, if you will, pushing for merchant category code, which you used to have to worry about what's in your wallet. Now you're going to have to worry about who's in your wallet, right? It's going to lead to firearm registration. It's going to lead to the banks being able to look inside the customer's check at the checkout basket and deny sales because that's the wrong kind of firearm. That's too many firearms. That's too much ammunition. So it's a real concern for the industry about that. And we've seen California now pass a law to mandate its use. So I want to thank you for signing the anti-MCC bill in your state and really appreciate that. Could you tell the audience why you thought that was important, why it mattered to the residents of your state and to the Second Amendment?
Well, that's an instance, rather than the issue with federal wildlife refuges, where our departments of finance that regulate the banking industry, we can do something. And that's why we did what we did in Idaho. We've got a long lineage of protecting the liberties, protecting the Second Amendment, and that was just a natural follow-on. But that is an instance where the states can have an impact, where we can say, if you want to do business in your financial institutions in your state, you cannot use this discriminatory privacy violation that was talked about, and that's why we passed that.
Well, we appreciate it. It really is very meaningful, and it's become a really important issue. We're hoping to see federal legislation introduced soon, instead of having the risk of a patchwork. I mean, California's already passed theirs. We need federal legislation to make sure this can't be done, because you can't have two systems for payment processing. Governor Gene Forte, welcome back. Thank you very much for being here again. Last year at the SHOT Show, at this forum, you announced that you would sign an executive order to address woke investing and pulling funds from these woke corporations and funds. So we really appreciate that. Discrimination on the financial side and woke banking continues to be a problem for our industry at the financial sector, social media sites, et cetera. Last year, you signed the FIND Act, the Firearms Industry Non-Discrimination Act, which is important not just for the businesses in Montana, but for the ability to attract business to your state. Could you talk about why you signed that bill and why you think that's important?
Sure. Thanks for having me back, and welcome everybody. It's great to have standing room only here. I just hope we say something that's worthy of your attention. So 2 points I want to make is, one is this ESG woke investing, which we see so prevalent on the coast. We did not want to see that negatively impact the pension. So it's unreasonable that someone who's invested in a 401k or a state pension should be willing to accept lower financial returns on their retirement funds just because some woke investor in Boston or San Francisco is advancing their political agenda. So what we did, we think as we invest the resources of the state, it should solely be done based on financial return and not some political agenda. So our State Board of Investment manages about $26 billion in assets. So what we did, and we have third-party financial managers, but we said, yeah, we want your advice, and we mostly moved into index stocks, so they weren't picking this good company and that not that bad company according to their woke agenda. And we took back all of the voting of all the proxies on all those shares. So the state now votes those for the benefit of our retirees and the state, because we don't want some political agenda getting into somebody's retirement fund. So that was a big step. And it was also the case, it was actually on the floor of the SHOT Show last year here where I was talking to one of our great Montana manufacturers, and they told me a story that they had been banking with a large national bank for 20 years and tried to get a loan for a new building. And the banker said, if you were just making a screw that went into a Revolutionary War flintlock, we wouldn't bank you. So we introduced a bill that made discrimination based on being in the firearms industry illegal in Montana, and I was proud to sign that.
And we truly appreciate it because we just continue to see that discrimination, and it's based on politics. It's not based on the creditworthiness of companies or their ability to pay back loans, et cetera. So you have an election coming up, And it looks like your opponent may be a gentleman that many people in the audience know, a gentleman by the name of Ryan Bussey, who used to work in the industry. He's now a gun control advocate for the Giffords organization. He's peddling a book to promote his gun control agenda. It's just full of his personal opinions, not really any facts. He's testified in Congress in support of banning modern sporting rifles and standard size magazines because he personally doesn't like those. So the question I would have is, does Mr. Bussey represent and share the values of Montanans? Does he, those values, including the Second Amendment? And what should voters back home know about his gun control agenda?
Well, I think our Constitution's pretty clear. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I don't know what's really confusing about that. Montana's home to 150 firearms and ammunition manufacturers, more per capita than any other state in the country, and we're recruiting more. If any of you love freedom, love free enterprise,
How do I get one of those?
we're open for business. And
Easy.
and I would just say, the opportunity to run against a gun grabber is a gift.
Yeah, I would imagine in Montana, I don't think his views would be particularly popular. But so, well, good luck in your election, and if he gets the nomination, it'll be interesting. Governor Gordon, again, welcome back to the SHOT Show. Wyoming has had a lot of success. Wyoming's had a lot of success in recruiting companies to Wyoming. You know, Weatherby, Magpul, Stag Arms out of Connecticut. It's a really terrific job, and that's obviously why you're here now. So there's a little competition, Governor Gianforte, but that's okay. Competition's good. It's what made America great.
He didn't take it from the blue states. Huh?
We're the quiet neighbor to the south where all the Montanans and Coloradans and others go hunting. So that's just the way it is.
But you know, your efforts have not just stopped at recruiting companies. You've invested $10 million to make a world-class shooting destination out of the Cowboy State.
Yeah.
Could you tell us how that came about and why you think that's important?
Yeah, well, thanks. And honestly, right here in this room, one of the things I think is so cool is that this is where America is. This is innovation, this is opportunity, this is freedom, and this is a group of people who know what a country that stands for those things can get done. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for hosting this show. And I'll tell you, in Wyoming, what we talked about, I've hosted and I've followed along with Governor Meade, who had hosted a governor's match, Magpul governor's match. It's a 3-gun or a 2-gun, depends on how it goes. And that's been incredibly successful. And people have loved to come and compete. And, you know, shooting guns is fun. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do, but it is really fun. And if you go to one of these matches, having the opportunity to use different firearms under different circumstances, get the training you need, that's all fantastic. And it really resonated around the state. And so a couple of legislators came to me and said, what do you think? What do you think if we build a world-class shooting range? And said, yeah, let's do that. So we put $10 million in it, 5 from our general fund. 2.5 is coming from the Business Council, which is here, walking around recruiting businesses. If you don't like what you see to the north where it's cold, no, just kidding, just kidding, Greg. And then about 2.5 comes from our game and fish, also here. And
So hold on, did you say you're recruiting businesses in my backyard?
well, yeah.
It just hit me like a light bulb.
So, no, honestly, that's what's great about this. I think, all love the fact that industry can grow and expand. I put together a task force from all different areas, sporting, sportsmen, casual shooters, and others. Our focus has really been on education. And, ammunition sales end up with those Pittman Roberts funds. So a big component of what we're doing is teaching about habitat, teaching about conservation, real conservation, not preservation. We're teaching about skills in the outdoors. We've got sections that are talking about blowguns, so it's not all just, modern long-range, high-precision shooting or whatever the latest fad is. It's about all forms of it. We've asked every community in the state to have a chance to look at. There are several here walking around talking about and trying to learn what's happening in your states. We want to understand a little bit better of what that's going to look like. I am really hopeful, and we've got an entire legislature that is completely behind building this world-class, not only for economic development, but just because it's a good thing for people to learn how to use a firearm. To the point about the Second Amendment, there's a responsibility with that, and that is what this country was built on, is our ability to be able to arm ourselves. And so having that training, having the opportunity, having a world-class shooting sports complex is something that we are all engaged in. And when we get to that point, Larry, I'd love to invite everybody out here to try it out.
We look forward to coming to the ribbon cutting. So it'll be a great facility. So you come from a financial background. You understand some of these topics that we've been talking about, discrimination, the FIND Act, and also, the merchant category code, which is a really troubling trend, as we just mentioned. There's talk of a bill in the legislature in Wyoming this year that would not allow the use of these discriminatory codes that will lead to gun registration, private gun registration, and will lead to, the big banks and payment processors being able to look inside and see what you're buying and decide whether you're allowed to use your own money to exercise your constitutional rights. So just from your perspective, why is that bill important? And would you commit to signing it if it gets to your desk?
Yeah, well, I have this sort of blanket policy. Until I see a bill on my desk, I'm not going to commit to it. But I generally support the idea. If a bill comes that's fairly clean, I would certainly entertain signing it. But I also think, and I think this is really important to note, this ESG that Greg was talking about has been sort of insidious. It started several years ago. I was one of the first treasurers of any state to come forward and say this is just the wrong way we should be doing things. Push back against it when they were talking about oil and gas industry. We knew that tobacco was coming along. We also knew the firearms industry was coming along. I have consistently fought against ESG. And to Greg's point, it's not just in Wyoming, we have a sovereign fund, and we are very conscious about how we invest. But this is a battle I've fought for pension funds as well. Greg's point, the beneficiaries are entitled to the best returns, and the responsibility of the boards of those pension funds is to invest for the best returns, not for somebody else's agenda, and not for lower returns, for heaven's sake. That's absolutely nonsense. So this is not just an issue that we face in the firearms industry. It is a tool that is being used across the country in investment circles that is attempting to try to manage people's investment, try to change people's attitudes, and it's contrary to the America that I grew up in and the ideals of America that I support and long to see happen again. And just one quick comment, if I may, and I don't mean to go off on a
go right
digression,
ahead.
but one of the biggest challenges in our country right now, and I think every governor here, you've heard the governors are where this happens, Governor Lombardo, you mentioned that. Governors have a job to do. And when you have Congress that is locked up and cannot get anything done, it allows the executive branch at the federal level to act with impunity. I think every single one of these governors, and I know there are some Democrats too, that are struggling with an executive branch which is out of control, cannot be controlled at all, and a legal system that is so pokey at coming to decisions that you might as well give up before you start. We need to take this country back, and it's going to start by being federal. Good comment.
Just briefly on that, I recently saw a poll that indicated that young adults have changed their view on this ESG investing, and they no longer support ESG investing. So it turns out they want to make money in the stock market too.
Well, and Larry, I don't mean to pick on a particular company, but they put it up on their sign. I just think that I've just been sitting in my head. It's Epic Resorts, and I know some of us have these, and I'm not picking on Epic Resorts, but they have an epic commitment to zero. Think about that language. Epic commitment to zero. I'm not committing to anything. Just think about it for a little bit. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. You're absolutely correct. These pension funds have a fiduciary duty to the retirees to earn the best possible return on their investment, not to make political statements. That's the legislature's job. That's not their job. And so it really is undemocratic, and it's really like boardroom policy, and it certainly affects our industry, as we've talked about. It's not just us. We see this in other, disfavored industries as well. Those other disfavored industries, however, aren't constitutionally protected, which makes it particularly egregious in our case. And we hear from companies all the time that their bank fired them simply because they make and sell a legal product that's constitutionally protected. So we need to, as an industry, and we appreciate all your support in pushing back on this, passing legislation like the FIND Act, and then enforcing the FIND Act, right? It's one thing to pass it, and then, but if companies don't live up to it, if they are continuing to discriminate, as we say of the FIND Act, it's not like we're trying to force them to, not to discriminate. They can make that choice, those companies, and discriminate if they want, in the marketplace, but the state has a choice as well and can decide who wants to do business with. And it doesn't have to do business with these companies that they don't share the values of the people in the state. And that's really what all the FIND Act does, is say you can discriminate if you want, but you're not getting taxpayer dollars. We're not going to underwrite it for you. So it's just critically important.
Absolutely.
Governor Huckabee Sanders, welcome. You're the rookie on the stage. We're very happy to have you here. Your predecessor, Governor Hutchinson, was here every year. He made recruiting businesses to Arkansas a priority and has had much success, and I'm sure he will continue. For example, Sig Sauer. Walther just announced a $30 million investment in their facility. You recently toured the Remington Ammunition Factory. And so I just wanted to ask you, why did you visit the Remington facility, and what did you see there, and why is the firearms industry important to Arkansans?
Right. Well, first, thank you for having me. I was a little worried that as the rookie, I might get hazed. Not everybody gets a question like the governor here. Why do you want to run against a gun grabber in Montana? And so
I told you they would be softballs.
I guess by like year 6, you get the easy questions. So I'm happy for him. But recruiting business is one of the most important jobs that each one of us have as governors of our state. And I think one of the things that, and I certainly don't want to speak out of turn and speak on behalf of the entire group, but I think it's very clear that you have a group of governors up here that are very committed to this industry and are happy to have you operate in our states. And so that's one of the things that I think Arkansas has the ability to lead in. It's a very important industry, the firearms, ammunition, plus getting to go to Remington. You get to shoot guns, which is always pretty fun. Much better than spending the day in the legislature and fighting with members there. And so it is such a critical part, not just of our economy, but frankly of who we are as a country. And to me, one of the things that my dad instilled and talked about and drilled into my head is that you cannot truly be a great country if you can't feed yourself, fuel yourself, and fight for yourself. And those are 3 of the most critical industries for our state. Our agriculture community is the #1 revenue producer that we have in the state of Arkansas. It's also a big part of who we are. our ability to fuel ourselves, not just as a state, but as a country, and having energy independence is what allows us to be a great country. And finally, and probably by far the most important piece of being a great and lasting country, is the ability to fight for ourselves, to defend our freedoms. It is the most important of all, is the ability to protect all the other freedoms and to push back, whether it's an overreaching government or against an adversary that means to do us harm. And so those are all industries that we're proud that we have a great stake in the state of Arkansas. It's something we want to grow. You know, I loved that the governor of Wyoming is trying to pitch you on his warmer weather. If you actually want warm weather, Arkansas is infinitely better than Wyoming or Montana. So
Let's talk chiggers.
yeah. So come on down. We've got SEC football. I know Governor Kemp will try to pitch you on that too. But
I was going to say, I think he might have an argument with you.
I think one of the biggest takeaways that you'll see from each one of us on this stage is that we're proud of this industry. We're proud to have it in our states. We want it to continue to grow. We want the companies that exist to reinvest and expand. And we're all open for business. And I'm happy to go toe-to-toe with any of these guys on why you should come to Arkansas, though, if you're looking to get out. But it's because we understand what it really means. While it can be great fun to hunt, to shoot, what it really means is a protection of our freedom and a protection of our great country. And that's why it's so important that this industry continues to grow and thrive, and while you'll see each one of us continue to fight for it in our states.
Well, we appreciate that. And again, thank you for being here. I wanted to ask you a question, though, about your prior service at the White House and the Trump administration, and compare and contrast that to what you see in the current administration.
I don't
You
know
mentioned,
how much time
you talked about like a hostile adversary. Well, currently, at least for our industry, we have a hostile administration. The most hostile administration towards the industry and the Second Amendment, I believe, in the history of the United States. Worse than the Obama administration, worse than the administration of a former resident of Hope, Arkansas, and not your dad. And you know, what we see is a whole of government attack on our industry by this administration, including now having an office to advance gun control in the White House, paid for by the taxpayer, staffed by the former federal affairs director for the Everytown Gun Control Group, which is just shocking that that's allowed to happen. You know, imagine if the Trump administration had an office to advance the Second Amendment and staffed it with, you know, Chris Cox or somebody. The left would be going apoplectic. Not unlike what we saw with Biden trying to nominate a Giffords gun control activist, lobbyist, David Chipman. I mean, if any Republican tried to do that and nominate, you know, the head of NRA Federal Affairs or myself or something like that, the left would be going insane. And frankly, they'd be right to do that, right? That's just not appropriate. So my question is, this whole of government attack that you see with this administration, do you think that's the proper role for the federal government?
Not only do I not think it's the proper role, but I think, and you pose this question a couple different ways, how do we work with this administration? I don't think we do. I think we vote them out. I think we get rid of them, and we put somebody in there who understands the Constitution. I mean, I would love to think that there is a way that we could educate them on the Constitution and educate them on the freedoms that every American is entitled to enjoy. But I don't think it's that they're unwilling to learn. I think they just don't get it. And I don't think they ever are. And it's time to move them out and put people in the White House that understand it, that are not only going to support, but frankly, fight back in a very big way to protect the Second Amendment and make sure that is never infringed upon at a state level or at a federal level. And if we see people in Congress that are also fighting against it, I say vote them out too.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Governor Pillen, welcome back.
Thank you.
Good to see you. In your state, Omaha and Lincoln have enacted gun control laws. The Attorney General has advised them that that violates state law, the preemption law. Why, in your opinion, why is state preemption important in the context of gun control?
Yeah. Well, maybe first before I hit, I want to just touch on what Greg said. The room is packed this year. Congratulations for everybody being here. And I love being in rooms where there's all like-minded people, believing in our freedom. And then I'll bet the farm that we all love to eat real meat as well, right? And I have to give a couple of my colleagues a bad time, in Nebraska. So we're roughly 2 million people. We have 2 million mama cows, and then we buy a whole bunch of baby calves from Wyoming and Montana. So we feed 5 million calves. We're the number one feeder of cattle. We feed the world and save the planet, Nebraska. And my privilege, the first law that I signed in as the 41st governor was LB 77 to be for concealed carry in the state of Nebraska. And it should have happened a long time ago. And one of the challenges, we have the unicameral. So the unicameral, we're the only one in the country, and the unicameral, 49 seats, representatives. And if you think about it, it just takes 17 votes to stop anything. It takes 33 to do anything. And so it takes extraordinary amount of partnering. So LB 77, so if we got 1 million people in Omaha. Half would be blue vests, half would be red vests. We got 250,000 people in Lincoln, probably a couple more blue vests and red vests. And so we have a couple mayors that have caved. And so we are fighting to make sure that the state constitution is upheld, and it's in the Attorney General's in court right now. And so it's really, really important that we work together, that we have more strength within our unicameral, so we are conservative all the way, so that nothing goes back, so that a city isn't allowed to break the constitutional authority of the state law, which is very, very clear. So, but it takes more, because there's 750,000 of us across the state that there's not a shadow of a doubt. Anybody in red, there's not. And so we're working very, very hard, partner with everybody. And, the long and short, what's so incredible about all of my colleagues up here as conservatives, our yes is our yes, our no is our no, and it doesn't matter what any kind of winds are blowing, none of us change. None of us change. Unfortunately, there are places that happens, and that's where we've got to work really, really hard.
Well, we appreciate your signing the right to carry bill. There's also another piece of legislation that's being talked about in Nebraska, and that is doing away with or reducing the burdens to exercising the Second Amendment rights and doing away with the permit to purchase.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that. Is that important to you? Do you see that as a priority, and how can you get that accomplished?
Yeah, so same thing. We've got to work very hard to partner to keep 33 people together to get it done. We're very optimistic we can get that accomplished this session. We've got a 60-day session. We've got a lot of important things to get done, but Senator Brewer, who carried the LB 77 last year, is championing that. I'm partnering with him. We think we can get that done, and we're also working on the legislation to allow guns in schools to make sure that we keep our kids safe. And yeah, we're very, very upbeat that we can get that accomplished, and we're not going to give up until we do.
Well, you mentioned guns in school. For the industry, we see these terrible mass shootings that all too often happen in schools, gun-free zones. And, school security seems, so obvious that that's part of the solution to address the problem, not banning people, law-abiding citizens from owning guns, but, having proper security, which would include armed guards, retired military, off-duty law enforcement, et cetera. Lots of options, lots of security measures that can be put in place, like, bullet-resistant glass. We saw the shooter in Nashville just, shoot through plate glass windows. There was no deterrent there. So that's really important. And one of the provisions in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, while the industry didn't support the legislation overall, there was some pieces in that legislation that were helpful. And the provisions for funding of school security, very important, and we supported that, as well as the provisions to provide more mental health resources at the community level. Because for us, these terrible mass shootings almost invariably come down to, an issue of mental health or, terrorism. And sometimes it's combined, right? So we see this all too often. The solution is not banning guns from law-abiding citizens. It's providing resources to address these mental health challenges. And then just like we saw in Maine, unfortunately, the balls were dropped by multiple agencies across 2 states at least. And that's what was the cause of that. That event in Lewiston, Maine shouldn't have happened if people had done their job and addressed it and not, just ignored it or not followed through. So we appreciate your work and all of your work on addressing school security as a means to address these issues, not banning guns. That, I'm not aware of any criminal who's going to obey that law, right? And
We've spent an incredible amount of time in the last 18 months across the state working with K-12 educators, school boards. And that's the one thing we all agree, our kids are our future. We never give up on a kid, but we have to keep them safe. And we're talking constantly about the importance of the safety and what guns will do, but also creating a culture of safety. Everybody in the school, from the janitor to the cook to the bus drivers to the custodians, everybody's a part, to the lady at the front, everybody's a part of the culture. See something out of whack, we all got to be on the same team to solve it.
And law enforcement training, the report came out recently about Uvalde, the failures there, that compounded that tragedy and prevented it from being stopped sooner at a minimum. So, that's part of the equation. It was very disappointing to see all these years after Columbine, where they didn't go in and engage right away. And we all saw the videos of them standing around for long periods of time, which was so frustrating. And yet, of course, the other side wants to blame the industry, wants to, suing the manufacturers and trying to blame them for what occurred in that tragedy. So that's, it's an important piece of the puzzle.
We all know what the truth is in this room.
Yes, we do. Governor Kemp, welcome back. Good to see you all the way on the other side. I've got a bone to pick with you.
Hey, I can say
You recruited away one of my best guys, so that's fine. But you got to pay the trade.
Well, we're all recruiting up here. I'll save your questions. I'll just say I agree with them.
Okay, we're a wrap.
So he wants all the business to come to Arkansas too, is what he's saying. So.
Well, I think you might get an argument there, but but we'll turn to that in a minute. On the FIND Act, actually, Georgia was the first state to pass and sign into law a FIND Act a number of years ago. But that bill was limited at the time to just state chartered banks, which is not as much of a problem. It's the large institutions that are the problem. So but the discrimination against the industry, as we've mentioned, is continuing. It's actually getting worse. There's now talk of a FIND Act 2.0 in Georgia that would broaden the scope and apply to the large banks as well, and to other service providers that discriminate against the industry. Again, we've been focused on the banks, but it's credit card processors, PayPal, Square, Google, Facebook. You can't advertise, on social media, and yet, our industry gets attacked by the other side for, advertising like it's so hard to advertise. So, talk to us about this bill and the effort to FIND Act in Georgia, and do you support it? And if it gets to your desk, will you sign it?
Yeah, I haven't seen the legislation yet, but I'm generally in support of that. I think the FIND Act that we were the first state to pass. Look, I don't know about. I kind of feel like there's something going on in the country with like-minded people like us. We experienced this after we passed the Elections Integrity Act back after the 2020 election, and the Major League Baseball, as you know, pulled the All-Star game from Georgia, and we just had people trying to pressure us and get us to change. And I stood up and said, look, we have a good bill that makes it easy to vote and hard to cheat, and we're going to stand up for our values in the state. We're not going to bow down to all this political pressure from, whoever, the media, powerful people, corporations. And we stood our ground, and we have been ever since. And I think that's where people are right now. And we've seen that around the country. I feel like Georgians, and I would think most Americans, at least that are like-minded like us, we just want people to quit telling us what we need to think. This is a free society. It is a free country. We have a Second Amendment. We can exercise, our individual rights if we want to. You don't have to do that. And we've been doing that for a long time, and Georgia is a state that supports that. And so I think people are just damn tired of everybody telling us how we need to live our lives. We don't want to go tell our neighbor how to do that. We just want to be able to exercise our individual freedoms. From my standpoint as a small business person for almost 40 years, Marty's with me, my wife, she has been as well. We don't want the government telling us what to do or what to believe. We just want to be able to make a living, provide for our people, provide for our families. But we think everybody should be treated fairly. And for financial institutions or payment companies or anybody else to really discriminate in a lot of ways about who they're doing business with, to me, I just think it's fundamentally wrong. And I think there's a lot of conservatives in and around the country that are now starting to push back on these institutions and say, you know what? We're either going to pass legislation or we're just going to quit doing business with you. We're going to be in the silent majority that says, look, we have had enough of you telling us what we need to believe and what we have to do. And so that's really how we're viewing things in our state.
Well, we appreciate that. So Georgia has had great success in recruiting and growing the firearms industry in the state. Glock, Danley Defense, Taurus, BPI Outdoors, H&K, Remington Arms announced recently it's leaving Ilion, New York after 200 and some years and moving all the production to Georgia. And Norma Ammo recently opened its facility in the Savannah area. So I'm going to ask the other governors to close their ears and can tell us what the secret sauce is.
Oh, well, they know the secret sauce. I mean, everybody up here is competing for the industries, and we all want them. We appreciate the industry that we have in the state. Over the 5 years that I've been governor, we've created over a couple of thousand jobs, but even more importantly, over $200 million of investments in the industry, which we're very proud of. They're going in communities where people are like, the community support for them is off the charts. People are buying the products and very supportive, and it's just really a good fit. We have a great business environment in Georgia. I think all these states do. That's what we work on every day, from lowering taxes, cutting regulations, unlike Washington, D.C. that we were talking about. I mean, it's the Biden administration pencil whipping the American people with regulations versus having the Congress passing laws to deal with all these things. And there's some pretty good Supreme Court cases right now that are going to be interesting to watch in regards to that. But we got great logistics in Georgia. We have an international airport. We got great seaports. We got great rail. We got great roads. We have a great workforce. We've invested in that. We're investing in our higher ed, our technical college system, our K through 12 CTAE programs, just all these things that you need to be able to have business-friendly policies. And you're seeing that shift happen all around the country right now. And a great example is between Georgia and California. We have a $16 billion surplus right now, and we're doing the largest state income tax cut in history, and we're accelerating that. And California has a either $35 to $58 billion deficit right now. Newsom says it's 30-something, so I imagine it's probably 58. But they are raising taxes, and that's what you're seeing with all these states that are up here. You're seeing, you know, this fiscally conservative, good business policy, free-loving Americans welcoming great people from around the country to the state. They're fleeing where they are in blue states. And it's the same type of crowd that's governing us in Washington, D.C. And so we are in a fight for the soul of our country right now.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in this room would agree, certainly NSSF believes that this is a critical election, and really not just for the future of our industry or even just the Second Amendment, but you know, the future of this country. Are we going to continue down this wrong track during, you know, direction of socialism, which is where we're headed, all this, or are we going to go back to first principles, respect the First Amendment, respect the Second Amendment, and all the things you talked about, allowing people to live their lives, make their own decisions, and not have the government tell them what to do, what to think, what to eat, what to drive, and things like that. So I want to turn to maybe a little bit lighter subjects. You know, the hunting season is basically over now, so I just want to go across and ask you, did you get a field this year?
I was going to say, not in
Well,
our.
I mean,
It's not where we are.
okay, well,
Another good reason to move to Georgia, hunting season.
there you go, okay.
You almost
So,
created a stampede over here.
Yeah. So did you get to go a field so far in the hunting season, which isn't closed yet? But and what did you hunt for? And what's your favorite species to hunt or method of take? We'll start with you, Jim.
Yes, for me, I like shooting those orange clay.
Okay.
But we like to do a lot of pheasant hunting and a lot of duck hunting in Nebraska.
Yeah. So I have to set the record straight here. There's been a lot of discussion about weather. And I just want you to know there's no such thing as bad weather. You just have the wrong clothes. So
You can find some of it out here.
you have my permission to go shopping. So in Montana, we can hunt big game 11 out of 12 months.
Wow.
Right now, we're hunting lions and wolves. Spring bear will start here in 60 days, and then that'll run through the spring. So I did have a chance, took a big mule deer buck this fall. We had to do a little population control. We harvested a lot of whitetail does, shot a lot of blue grouse, and got 5 days over the holidays hunting lions.
Fantastic. Great fun.
Well, we don't have any lions. But we are the duck hunting capital of the world in Arkansas, in case you didn't know. Some other states may have duck hunting, but it's not quite as good as in Arkansas. Had the chance to go duck hunting a few times, pheasant hunting. We're one of the few states where you can hunt duck, deer, elk, bear, all in the same day, in the same season, and turkey as well. So big hunting state, something we're really proud of. In fact, I did not kill the gator that I have on my boots in Arkansas, but I did shoot the gator that these boots were made out of in Louisiana. I'm kind of proud of that.
Well, I'm glad Sarah admitted she hunted in another state. So, yeah.
And next year, maybe we'll have Governor Landry here.
Absolutely. And we may all go hunting with Greg and kill ourselves a lion too. So.
So you can't defer your weather in Montana off of clothes. It's if I'm not mistaken, it was minus 40
Just the way
just
we like it.
recently. So prior to getting elected governor, I did a majority of, I'm embarrassed to say, I did a majority of my hunting in Wyoming. And And the only reason why is very difficult to pull a tag here in the state of Nevada. But just recently, last season, I did get a 6x6 up in Cave Valley, which is about a 3-hour drive from here in Las Vegas.
Fantastic.
Oh, very nice. We have something called the one-shot hunt in Wyoming. I was able to harvest an antelope. That felt great. But what was more fun, there's a women's version of that, the ladies' antelope hunt, which my wife has participated in for several years. And it's always fun to go in the field with her. It's great because they also mentor non-hunters and Democrats. And so I just want to say, it's a good deal. She was very successful. They won the competition this year, so that was awesome.
And Colorado is reintroducing the wolves, so I think we might see an expanded wolf season in Wyoming.
Well,
At least
yeah,
the
you know-
cattlemen said they're ready.
As a rancher, it's not, it's protection of my livestock, but
Yeah.
if that's hunting, that's okay too.
Governor.
Well, this fall we did some upland game bird hunting, but my grandsons both harvested their elk and their deer, and there's nothing better than having your grandkids and having the next generation go on and do what I used to do, and it's and their enthusiasm level. They got a little better guns and they got a little better clothes than I had when I used to hunt all the time.
Governor Kemp.
Yeah, we had a great year because last year was horrible. Because, when you're running against Stacey Abrams in a re-election campaign, you missed most of the hunting season.
Was it her reelection or your reelection?
No, it was mine. But,
The incumbent won.
Kind of after November when my season started last year, but this year's been great. We started dove hunting in September in Georgia. We've, deer hunted. We've been quail hunting, going duck hunting. But probably the most fun thing we've done, we have 3 daughters. 2 of them for sure really love to shoot and hunt. And we've been helping some folks eradicate some wild hogs that create all kind of problems on places in our state. We really had a good time taking the girls to do that. They enjoyed it. And so that's been a lot of fun getting to see the next generation come along.
So we're sort of getting deep into our hour. We wanted to have an opportunity for the audience, the reporters, the media in the audience to ask a couple of questions if you have the time and before we wrap it up.
Well, we got the first question right here.
Good afternoon, governors, and welcome to SHOT Show. My name is Sarah Joy Albrecht, and I'm the founder of Hold My Guns. We're a nonprofit in the firearms community that supports gun owners by providing voluntary firearms storage through partnering FFLs during times of need. We have 9 storage partners, including in Laramie, Wyoming, and also Cumming, Georgia. And we stored 118 firearms in 2023, which was up from just 5 in 2022. Our work is saving lives, protecting property, and preserving rights. More than half of all firearms-related deaths are suicides. Gun control lobbyists often weaponize mental health under the guise of suicide prevention. What are you proactively doing in your state to fight for due process and the rights of gun-owning Americans who may find themselves in a time of temporary crisis?
Anyone want to take that?
We're all afraid of it.
Well, we're the only state where the judicial branch, the executive branch, the legislative branch all work together to address the big issue of behavioral health. And we're doing great work, but it seems like some of the challenges, the societal challenges, the problem is getting worse faster than our cures are. I frankly believe that, and I talked to a bunch of school teachers just last week, that if you go into the military, no matter who you are, from the first day to the general, you learn first aid. The reason you learn first aid is because, they've got incredible medic corps and they're there. But when you go in to be a teacher, there's nothing for behavioral health. There's nothing to recognizing a kid with a problem. We have got to give those teachers Because those classroom problems that we've had in America, those kids didn't show up on that day and have a problem. They had a problem earlier. And we can do a little bit of intervention earlier. We can save ourselves a whole lot of anguish. Because I would much rather pay a little bit to help some kid in school than have them be on my dole for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And can I just respond to that too? You know, your question was about due process, and I was trying to roll through my head in Wyoming where that would even come up. I don't think it has, and we would certainly make sure the due process was fully served. But just like Idaho, we have an all-branch approach to mental health, and it has been from the reform of our community mental health centers to actually empowering. There's a great program, Veterans Talking to Veterans, which involves coaches, not counselors, not shrinks or anything else. And it's kind of peer-to-peer. We've really had a very successful launch on that for those of us in the agricultural industry where there's some challenges there. And I know the J Foundation's also in Idaho. This is let's get a conversation going too. Boot check, pull up your boots and tell me how you're doing. We've got a lot of these things going on. It's had a real benefit to our population, reducing the stigma and making sure that we have the support there. I know that's not exactly what your question was going to, but I want to tell you we would protect due process rights under any circumstance. But it's a big issue, and we need to be able to meet it where people need it.
So Governor Gene Forte, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I would just add, I think that the upstream issue is behavioral health. And in Montana, we were fortunate because we had a really fiscally conservative budget. We had a big surplus coming into this last session. We gave $1 billion back to the people of Montana, and we fixed what was broken. And one of those things was our behavioral health. So we don't have as big a budget as some of these other folks up here, but we put $300 million to bring back community-based mental health, get back into the schools, get into the county detention centers. We've really never had that level of investment, and it's important.
Can I add something, do you mind? On the mental health piece, I think it's very clear that there's a true mental health crisis that's taking place in the country. And it's not always the most popular opinion. And while I think social media can be a great tool, I think it's one of the biggest contributing factors, particularly to our young people. As a parent, I have 3 kids. I have an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And am living in real time as we're watching depression, suicide, anxiety rates skyrocket, particularly among girls ages 8 to 14. It has quadrupled over the last decade. And in large part, all of the data suggests because of the rise in access to social media. In our state, we passed a law, which we're in a lawsuit over, and I'm hopeful that we'll win or that the federal government will take on a similar initiative, but requiring parental permission for anyone under a certain age, 16 or 18, before they're allowed to get on social media. It is a true problem, and if we don't address it, I think it's going to continue to get worse. We can keep throwing money and money and money at the problem, but if we don't start taking and making some changes at the access point that is creating a lot of the problems for our young people, we're just going to continue to see the problem get worse.
Yeah, very, very true. Another question.
Terry Maxwell, KNZR in Bakersfield. COVID-19 was a lesson on how easy it is to truly take away the rights and freedoms from citizens through a perceived emergency. Do you see the same thing happening with guns and our Second Amendment rights? What does that look like? And to give you kind of a primer, maybe you could include the WHO in that answer.
Anyone?
Well, I mean, I'll speak to the pandemic because we went through, being one of the last states to have a measured closing with just a few industries keeping most of our economy open and be the first to reopen, and then having the wrath of the White House and the national media, public health experts, people on the left, my political opponents, and everybody else coming after us. We just never wavered. And I told people, during those times, people would say, thank you for standing up, thank you for standing strong and not wavering. And I said, look, I wasn't, I was just fighting for you. because I just didn't believe Georgians were going to sit in their basement anymore and lose everything they got because of the damn virus. And we just gave people the opportunity to make that decision and to fight back. And I think, you know, when you look at the Republican governors that were in office at that time and the ones that we have now, I mean, this economy that we have it's just been a damn mess with inflation and everything else. But the good things that you're seeing happening, they're mostly happening in Republican governor-led states because, you know, we started the Great American Comeback after COVID-19 and we haven't let up since. And I think you're seeing that paradigm shift now. And I think to, you know, the point of taking away freedoms, I know one thing, I learned a damn good lesson there. There's things I wouldn't ever do again. There's a lot of things I'm glad I didn't do that, you know, Fauci and Birx and other people were really pressuring governors at the time to do. It was unbearable at times. But I think we also all learned a lot that, you know, we cannot let government control us like that. And I think if anything, we're moving the other way on that accord. At least that's the way I feel like most of the state of Georgia is feeling.
You know, and I'd add to that, Brian, I know you went through that, so did Brad. You know, there were times that the pressure was unbelievable. I can remember getting a call from Mark Meadows at the time saying, you got to shut down your state. There were 5, I think, or 6 of us that said, hell no, we're not going to do that. And that would happen with the gun thing either. And I'm proud as can be that Brad and I worked hard to make sure that Yellowstone Park opened. First park in the country, I believe, that opened. And everybody, the Guardian was there. And I remember the headline. It was, look at Old Faithful, people everywhere and no masks in sight. What a mess this is going to be. Turned out everybody is fine. So just saying, you know, stand proud. These governors, terrific people.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody in the audience. We're out of time, unfortunately. I'm sure we could go on for quite a while, this conversation, but we need to let the governors get back out there and compete against each other. So thank you for joining us, governors. We really appreciate it. Thank you for coming. Have a good time.